Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Freeman Focus podcast. I'm your host, Mariano. And before we get started, I want to give you a quick shout out to our sponsor, What the Snark in Wild Rose, Wisconsin. What the Snark specializes in custom apparel, hats, hoodies, decals, and branded gear, all designed and produced locally in Wild Rose, Wisconsin. Melissa and her team do an incredible work for businesses and organizations throughout the area and they help support this podcast to make it possible. Now let's get into today's episode. Today's guest is someone that I've known for a few years and is also someone I've personally worked for in the past. John is the owner of Wenninger Auto Repair and Towing and Wenninger Auto Sales, and he operates a true 24-hour service. While most of us are asleep, either John or someone on his team is out on cold, dark roadways, helping people get home safe and handling difficult situations with care and professionalism. As someone who used to work for his towing crew, I have a deep appreciation for the dedication that it takes to show up at all hours and serve the community in the way that he and his team does. We're going to do this episode a little bit different. We're going to get into this one with a deep dive into the life of John Wenninger, and this is probably going to become a multi-episode special, so definitely stay tuned for future episodes with John. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce today's guest, John Wenninger. Welcome to the Freeman Focus.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, let's start at the beginning. John, why don't you take it from here?
Okay. Back when, I grew up in Hubertus, Wisconsin. Now, if people that don't know where that is, that's real near Holy Hill. Everybody knows where Holy Hill is. So Hubertus, Richfield, Slinger, that's where all our relation were from. And I'll tell you what, as my family, I had one older brother, I'm the youngest, and I had 5 sisters in the middle. So
Wow.
you can only imagine that mess. So as being the youngest, my brother and I are 16 years apart, and we couldn't be any more opposite. I mean, night and day. When I was 4 years old, he was moving out of the house to get married. He was 20 years old. So, I mean,
Wow.
I've never really spent much time with my brother as far as, brother things go, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
With just the age gap in there. And the 5 girls, well, you can only imagine that wasn't going to be for me. So it was, I'll tell you what, really good family, good parents, good family, good hardworking family, all of them, every single one of them. They did a great job. They still do. But I'll tell you what, when I grew up, when I was little, we started living at Bark Lake down there in Hubertus, and you're 3-4 years old, you got a sandbox. Well, I built a complete pit with dozers and loaders, and we had a local pit in town, and I kind of made it all look just like that. I suppose every kid did, right?
Right, absolutely.
But I could never stop taking stuff apart, right? I mean, it was always you just either you have it or you don't. You start with it, right? And as we got older, and we built a new house on Hubertus Road. That was, I think, in 1975 we did that. So my dad worked for Pabst Brewery and my brother worked for Miller. So you could only tell the rivals there was, right? They'd carpool together. And so our fridge was full of Pabst and his was full of Miller. And with the 5 sisters, when I was younger, I'd have to say probably 7, 8. You're probably too young to notice, but for Christmas, I got an erector set. You know what that is? It's like all steel angle iron with screws and bolts and nuts, and you could build anything you wanted to build. You could build a skyscraper, you could build a car, you could build anything, right? So I got one for Christmas, and I got a couple of them after that, because I would just, for hours, being the only one. I was the only one, right? I'm the youngest one. There was no Xbox or anything back then. You just basically started doing things like that.
There was
And with
sandbox.
No, yeah, well, it started with the sandbox, and then we went to the stuff like that. But my sisters, when we moved to Hubertus Road, we still had I think all 5 of them lived at home yet, and I was probably 8 or 9, maybe 7. Well, you can only imagine how many hair dryers were in that house. Well, I'd take my erector set and I'd build a car, and I would take a hair dryer apart, and I'd pull the motor out of it.
No
And
kidding.
I would put it in the car, put the hair dryer back together, and put it in a drawer. So next time I use it, it just didn't work, right?
Didn't work.
And I'd put that motor in that car, and I'd wire, I don't know why I'm even alive. I'd plug it in the wall, and that thing would either flip over or take off until the cord came out, or something would happen. You know what I mean? Something would happen.
Oh my God. Yeah, a spark, and it would just.
Well, I just plugged it in, and the motor would just take off. and then it would drive, and I was really young when I did that. I can't even tell you how many hair dryers I took apart, and they never knew about it.
And they were not even broken hair dryers. You broke them yourself.
Oh, absolutely. I got the parts I needed and put them back together. So when they didn't fire off, they just figured it was
Oh
a
my
bad hair
gosh.
dryer. But
That's
no, it
funny.
was. But I mean, that's where you start building. You start kind of engineering stuff like that. And I love doing it. It was always fun. And to this day, I still do. I love building things. As we go on and get a little bit older, when I was about 11, my dad passed away. And
My condolences.
yeah, thank you. And my mom then had to work 2 jobs. So then I was really pretty much on my own from 11 on. And at that point, I I don't know, it probably made me stronger and more independent, right? Because at this point I had to figure things out myself. Not she did everything she could. She did a wonderful job. But unfortunately, when you work 2 jobs, you're not around a lot, right? You
And
work all day and
there's no other male influence in the household at this point, right? So,
no, no, but I was lucky though. My brother, 16 years older than me, literally lived across the yard. They built their houses
oh,
next to each other.
nice.
So, I mean, he kind of took that role model, right? So if
We're
you had any
experiencing a
problems or
little bit of lag
questions,
spike here, John. Just give it
he
a
would help me
second.
with that. But I think my first
We
job, I
might
think was
bounce
at
back from this.
14 years old. I had my first job.
We we cut out a little bit there.
Yep.
It might have caught it though. It might have caught it, so it's fine.
So at 14 years old, I ended up I had my own job. My brother and his friend, my brother worked at Miller, but they had a business that the first business they started was a worm business. I mean, like where they had a lot of worms and they would sell them to a distribution place. And I had to make all the food. We separated the eggs from the worms. And I can tell you at 14 years old, I knew everything there was to know about a worm. And I did that for a couple of years, and then, that was, it was a good learning experience. You know what I mean? And it didn't take off quite like they thought it would. But at any rate, I learned how to take care of worms. So that was my first real part-time job at 14 years old. As I got a little older, I should back up a little bit. But yeah, about 14, I would build everything in the garage at home, but I had to use nuts and bolts because I couldn't weld anything, right? I didn't have a welder. I must have burned out 50 drills, drilling holes and bolting stuff together. It started with lawnmowers and you just start building on stuff. And we didn't have a lot of money, so there was no YZ80 or there was no quads or you know what I mean? Somebody bring an old lawnmower by and I'd be lucky to get it and get it running and that's what I used to putz around with. But when I think it was Christmas when believe it was 14 years old, all I wanted for Christmas was a Lincoln 225 stick welder. That's all I wanted. And my mom got me one.
No
And
kidding.
no, yeah, I got one. Fleet Farm Special 225 Lincoln. And
Wow.
back then they were pretty cheap, but it was still a lot of money back then, right?
Right.
So a friend of mine came over, he ran the wires through the house and got in the garage, hooked it up. And he knew how to stick weld. So he kind of gave me a little bit of a lesson, the ins and outs of it. And I'll tell you what, I bet you within a week I was one of the best stick welders there was. I lived on that thing. I learned how to cut with it, I learned how to weld with it. And I could weld together, I learned how to cut it back apart if I had to. I was so happy not to have to nut and bolt everything together anymore. That's 14 years old. I mean, I was just ecstatic. And I built I shouldn't say I built a lot of things in my life, a lot of cool things. And for no other reason, just because I don't like to be the same, right? I want to make something that nobody has, a one-off, one of one. And when I got a little bit older there and turned 16, I ended up getting a job at Fleet Farm in Menominee Falls. And I was outdoor loading there for, I think it was about a year and a half or so. And loved that job. Didn't pay much. Back then, I think it was like $4 and I don't know, 35 cents an hour,
Wow.
Yeah, well, that's what it was back then, right?
And that probably good money, more or
Well,
less.
it was, yeah, but it was enough money to buy everything you needed to pay for, right? I mean,
Back then only one person had to work to support a household too, typically.
yeah, that's my dad did. That's what he did. He worked one job at Paps, and my mom didn't work at the time at all. I don't even think she had a license then at all. She had to get her driver's license after he passed away. So I'm almost
Mm.
positive about that. And then she had to learn how to drive. But
Yeah.
anyways, when I got to be around 16, a lot of things started happening. Um, got a job at Fleet Farm, had my own car, got my license the first time at 16. And well,
What was
let
the
me tell you
first
what,
car?
when I got my
First car, what
license,
was it?
76 Chevy Vega.
Okay.
Yep. 2-door, blue, looked nice, burned a lot of oil. I used to take that to school in Hartford, and there was a hill called Colpeen's Hill, and if it was too low on oil, I couldn't make it frontwards, so I'd have to turn around and back up the hill to keep enough oil in the front of it, because if it didn't see enough oil, it would shut the electric fuel pump off.
Wow.
So I'd have to back up that hill, turn around, and then keep going.
The
You
fact
you
that you
just think,
figured that out though.
"Oh, yeah, yeah," back when I was, Mariano, when I was 16, I was probably on my, I don't 10th engine job
No
that I
kidding, huh?
did. Yeah, oh god, yeah. My brother used to, God, I must have been 16, 17. My brother rented his pole building out, and the guy had a 70 Chevelle with a 396 in it. I think it was 17 years old. I pulled that motor, did a complete rebuild on it, and put it back in. I mean,
Wow.
that 70 Chevelle matching numbers today is probably worth 80,000 right now. Yeah, and then
Easy.
that was one of the first motors I ever built. I think it was the second
Wow.
motor I built. I built one for me, and then I built that one. So,
So
I
the
mean,
first engine you've ever built was a Chevy.
yeah, first one was a 350, and the second was a 396.
Yeah.
And it's amazing that somebody with a car back then, that car was probably worth 28,000 back then, and that's a lot of money back then for that car, and, to trust me, you know what I mean? This car was gorgeous. Pull it out, put it in, don't put any scratches in it. I mean, it's, you know, but to me, that was like breathing air, right? It wasn't a big deal. You just pulled it apart
And
and
this
you
is
did
at
it.
16, right? You said this is at
No, it's
16?
about 17.
16, 17 still.
17,
Wow.
yeah.
That's impressive to be working on that type of jobs at that age,
Oh,
you know.
when I was 17, I ended up getting a building from the town of Richfield. It was like it was at the park, and it was like a pavilion. So the side doors would open up so you could serve burgers or beer or whatever out of it. And it was 16 wide by 29 feet long. And they gave that to me. And I talked to my mom, and I said, I'd like to put this in the backyard so I can have my own little a shop to work out of, right? And it was we had really good neighbors, unbelievable neighbors. The whole community was good, right? And I talked to the guy across the road. His name was Merv Raffco Mason, and I said, Merv, I'd like to put a slab here, but I'd like to, I would really like a pit in here, so I could work on cars in the pit.
Yeah, those are nice.
Yeah, so he thought about it, and we talked about it. He said, well, you got to ventilate. I said, yep, we got to do all that. And, but he came over, he blocked in, he put a block pit in, poured the concrete. I mean, and basically he did it probably for what it costs, right? I mean, he's just a good neighbor. And I had an old 1954 ton and a half grain truck. And I was 17 years old. Motor is bad. I pulled it out. I put a 350 Chevy in it, stick shift, and it's got like 20 some foot flatbed on it. We took it over to Bark Lake. I cut the opening in that shed, packed that truck in, jacked it up, supported that whole building on that 1954 Chevy ton and a half truck. And a guy I knew, Charlie Betzel, he drove that. He drove that from Bark Lake to my house, which is probably, I would say 2 miles. And we had to do that in the middle of the night. I mean, this is all at 17 years old.
Wow.
And I got that on, I got that backed on there. And the only thing I really kind of forgot about was the exhaust fumes, because he was in a building and he's driving his truck. I should have kicked the exhaust out a little more, but he made it through it. We had to stop for a few air breaks, but he made it.
Little carbon monoxide never hurts
Yeah,
anybody.
right.
Just,
Well, it
just a
wasn't
little
like it
bit.
was completely sealed up. It was off the
Right.
ground, but still, you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
So we got it back then. We lowered it on the slab, bolted it down. I made my own doors, and I worked out of that thing probably for 5 years. And I cannot tell you the amount of work I did out of that garage. You know, you think, you look at now how many buildings I have and garages, and that 16 by 29 to me was like everything, right?
It's like a
Toolbox, air
mansion.
compressor, welder. I didn't have to lay on my back anymore to unhook a transmission, or you know what I mean, or an engine. I pull it over the pit, and but at that time I had a lot of customers. I mean, a lot of customers at that time, and it's never really stopped. You know what I mean? I enjoyed doing it.
That's awesome.
So now we're, what are we, 17 years old here? So then when I turned 18, this is when a lot of things start changing. 17 and a half years old, I graduated high school. I graduated early. I was a worker, not a school guy, right? I wasn't going to college. I just wanted to work. So at 17 and a half, I went to Ackerville Garage. My cousin Hunter owned it, and gave me my first real job as a mechanic, right? So I went up by Dunner, and I was there probably all good half a year. I learned a lot from him. So I was there until I was 18, a little over 18. And I'll tell you what, he would leave on record. That's towing. That's where the towing came from. He loved
Okay.
towing. I mean, that was his passion, was towing. He had 2 wreckers at the time. That was a long time ago. And he loved towing. So he would go on tow calls, and I'd have to, I started to hear, put a clutch in this Mustang. So I'm putting a clutch in the Mustang, over torqued the flywheel, or
Snapped a
the
couple bolts, fly
snapped the
bolts.
bolt off in the flywheel, right? Oh, so you're gonna be pissed. I fired up the welder, welded nut on, extracted it, got a new bolt, put it in. Never did tell him. I mean, I was always, and I'm not trying to brag, but I'm always was a good problem solver, right?
Right.
There's a
Absolutely.
problem to solve it. There's a solution to every problem. So then I worked for him for about a half a year. Real good guy to work for. But then I got an opportunity. I got a job at Briggs and Stratton down in Milwaukee, and
Okay.
that was at the foundry. So I go down there to the foundry, and my cousin got me in there. He works there too. He was a farmer, and then they kind of sold the cows off back then, and he went to Briggs, and I swear to God, I got the worst job in the whole place. I had to rebuild ladles. You know what a
I've
ladle
done
is?
that refractory installer. You had to compact all that refractory. Ba, 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 ba,
Yep,
ba. Well,
yep.
I use an air hammer. You might not have had an air hammer
Oh
back then.
no,
I'm not sure.
no. These ladles were huge.
The
I'd have
ones
to,
I'm talking about were massive too,
yeah.
like
So I'd have to take an
huge.
80-pound air hammer, chisel them all out. Then I'd have to put a die in it. Then you pour all the refractory back in it. Yeah, and then it would sound like concrete.
Yep,
Well,
yep.
the first one, I'll bet you the first one took me a week.
Wow.
And well, it just learning the whole thing, right? I mean, I'm not a factory guy, and then I
I've
go to
literally
this.
worked at the Berlin Foundry, Citation Berlin, and did
Yeah,
that same exact job,
yeah,
but in a different place, obviously. But
right,
so
right.
I know what you went through.
Yeah. So then I was there for about 8 months, and then that's back when I forget exactly what year it was, but Briggs and Stratton had a huge layoff, and I ended up getting laid off because I was the last one there. But when I was done, I took that job. Instead of doing one a week, I was doing two a day, and still I was done by 11 o'clock in the morning. I had to wait till one to go home. It just once I could take the worst job in the world, and I will figure out how to make it efficient. And that's what I would do. And then I would get done with it, and I'd say, "Can I go grind parts?" And no, he said, "No, you're union. You can't. No, just sit down." And he said, "You can't. You can't."
Yeah, you have to pee
I never,
straight. You can't do that. You can't go above and beyond.
yeah, yeah, you can't. No, exactly. He said, "Well, what about the guys that are grinding parts? Would you would take their job?"
Yeah, that's
So
their
I just,
money right there.
yeah, I thought maybe I could help, right? No,
Yeah.
I got straightened out on that real quick. But anyways, and that's just the point is I could take any job and figure it out, right? Make it easier. So then they laid me off, and right up from my house, about a quarter mile, there was a little Bill's garage. Bill Schmidt, knew him forever. So I went up there. I said, "Bill, you need some help? I'm laid off." Blah, blah. He said, "Yeah, yeah." So I worked for him for, I'm 18 now, 18 and a half. I worked by him until I was 20. I believe I was 20. I was 21 years old. And long story short, I worked for him, and I ended up getting a job at the town of Richfield, and as a mechanic. But we'll back up to that. So as this is all going on, working for Bill's, um, we had a little hunting spot, a little hunting club up in Hintz, Wisconsin, and we had bought, and there was five of us. We had bought in it was like a blacksmith shop. It was an apartment upstairs and like a garage below. And all five of us, we took about 6 months every weekend. We redid that whole upstairs. I mean, it was beautiful. It had bunk beds, apart, like sleeping quarters, kitchen, the whole thing, living room. And lo and behold, right next door is the Hintz bar. And it's a little town of Hintz. Hintz has got, I don't know, 20 people in it. It was that small. But guess who lived a mile down the road? Dawn Miller. That's where I met Dawn. And her
No
sister.
kidding.
Yep, and her mom and dad. Yep. Oh yeah. So we were there every weekend, right? And they'd be coming and going, and we just kind of just ran into them and started knowing them. And so when I was 20, so let's back up. When Dawn was 17, I went to her high school graduation, and God, that was 34 years ago. Still
Wow,
together ever since. 34 years.
that's
That's
beautiful.
all. Yeah, yeah, yep. I was sitting in the bleachers. She was 17. I think I was, we're 3 years difference, so 20. And then when she turned 18 and I was 21, she actually moved to Richfield because I worked for the town then. And we were down there for a few years. But anyways, didn't want to skip that part.
Yeah, it's a
That's
beautiful
what,
part of the story, man. That's
yeah,
awesome.
that's where I met her. And so anyways, so I met her. She came down. I got a job at the town of Richfield. I got to tell you a story about that. So the same cousin that got me into Briggs and Stratton, right? He goes and applies for this job at the town of Richfield. Here's the problem. There's a 5-man board and a chairman. Well, the chairman's a farmer, right? Well, my cousin was a farmer, right? Farmers in Hubertus, Richfield. So they were looking for a mechanic, not just a guy to shovel gravel or, they wanted somebody that could actually fix trucks. They had at that time probably 12, 13 trucks did 130 miles of road back then, and they needed somebody that could fix trucks. So I went to the board, I did my interview, went through it, and I ended up getting a job, right? And the chairman calls, he says, well, just tell him you got the job. I think it was the wrong decision. Your cousin should have got the job, not you. And I'm like, boy, this is starting off on the right foot, huh?
Wow.
It's like he should have got it because he was a farmer, and I shouldn't have got it because I'm not a farmer or whatever.
Yeah.
But the other 5 people on the board all voted for me. They said this is what we need. And at that time I'm 21 years old, right? And it's kind of like every time I tell my mom, hey, I'm gonna go and do this. I'm gonna put this shit on the slab, and she'd look at me and she's that'll never work. That'll never work. And I think that was just the fire I needed to just prove them wrong, right? Just completely go the opposite direction and make this work, no matter what. And it was the same thing when John Cole told me that. He goes, I wanted your cousin, not you, blah, blah, blah. And he went on, he said, he's a hard worker, blah, blah, blah. So that just put a fire in me, right? And I just, I could storm through stuff that they never fixed. I would just tear apart, rebuild, and fix. And
Prove 'em wrong.
oh, 100%, 100%. And after about 6-8 months of that, the chairman really liked me.
Oh,
We had a
100%.
good working relationship.
You're
I could get
fixing
along.
everything.
Yeah, I could get along. Well, then he could see, right? He could see what the
100%.
other board members seen, right? We had this old they always got old leftover stuff from the county. This is a town, right? So we had this old 1970 Drott. It's a Cruiser. It's like an excavator on wheels, right? And this thing's a 1970. It's got old loud Detroit, whatever. And this is you get to work with this. And the first, I think it was 2 months I was there, they were trying to put they load brush. We had a dump site. They get all this brush, and this guy'd come in with a tub grinder. And the guy would tell me, hey, this thing's got 600 horse cat. You can't snub it out. I mean, so the first time we did brush, I'm new there. I just get the loader, and we're pushing brush and loading. There's 3 of us. It took 2 days to put that brush pile through that chipper. It was a big brush pile, right? So we got done with that, and I looked it all over, and I called the chairman. I said, hey, that old Cruiser. I said, you mind if I do just a little bit of modifying to it? He goes, yeah. He said, do whatever you want. I said, okay. I didn't tell him what I was doing.
You love those words, right? Do
Yeah, right.
whatever you
So
want. Build it however you want to build it, John.
I had an old muck bucket. I put big spikes on it. I put a big thumb on this thing, right? And that fall, we had a lot of trees and stuff. That summer went down. So I mean, it was full. Same guy rolls back in with his 600 horse cat brush tub grinder, and I come rolling down there with this Cruiser, right? I mean, you're running this. It looks like you're doing a Victani. I mean, you're throwing your arms and your feet, and it looks you're really working this thing to make this thing go. So I told we had a loader and we had a backhoe loader. I said, guys, you just keep pushing that brush pile to me, and I'll make it disappear. And the guy, the tub grinder, and we start going, right? And I'm going as fast as I can. They're pushing that brush pile. I mean, I'm picking up the size of dump trucks full of brush, putting in this tub grinder, pushing it down, and we're going, and this thing's just belching black. And the guy's, stop. He said, you're killing my machine. He said, hold it, sir. I said, you told me that was technically impossible. You told me you couldn't kill this machine. Well, you did it. You know how long it took us to do a whole brush pile? 4 hours.
Wow, 2 days to 4 hours.
Yeah, I mean, it's stuff like that would just drive me nuts, right? I had to find a solution to the problem. I just couldn't let it go like that. I just couldn't do it.
Time is money. You can't sit there and just throw time around like that.
No, and it was, back to the guy told me, you can't choke this machine. And I thought, well, there it is, right? You can't again. I've heard that so many times in my life. You can't. But and I always told my kids when they grew up, there's no such thing as can't. That's not in your vocabulary. It's not in mine. There's no such thing. You just make it work. You figure it out. But don't come and say, I can't do this, because you can. You know what I mean? You just got to have the attitude to do it. So then after I was there for about, oh God, it must have been until I was 24. Yeah, I was 24. Dawn lived with me. We lived at home. I lived in the basement. At that time, you had at Richfield. It was expensive to live down there. I mean, a lot was $30,000. A house was another 150. I mean, back then I made good money, but that was a lot of money, right? During this time, I had bought 40 acres and a trailer up here where I live now, which was a house on there. And I had bought the first original shop on Pickle Roll. It looked like a Quonset hut almost. I bought it and leased. I bought it and rented it out when I was, I don't know, 22, 23. Bought it really young. All of this stuff I found, and you know Randy Rademacher Senior.
I don't think I've met him, but I know of him.
Okay, he worked at the town with me, right? And then when he quit the town and moved up to Watoma, I ended up getting his job at like 23 years old. And then I kind of was I was kind of the guy that ran the whole deal, the roads, the maintenance, the whole thing at that time. But Randy's the one that found me the house, found me the building in town. I mean, he was always looking around and, hey, I got this and I got that. I didn't come up and visit him for 2 years. I didn't know where Watoma was, right? And then one day we came up and took a ride and came and visited him. And once I seen what, about Watoma, I said, well, look for this and look for that. And he did. He found me the shop in town, then he found me the land and the house, and I bought it all. I bought that up. And then God, it was about 1990, had to be 95, right around there. 94, 95. I told Don, I said, well, we can either stay living here and retire and in the property up north, we can enjoy it maybe, 10, 15 years. I don't know. You don't know, right? Nobody knows. Hopefully you're in good enough shape to enjoy it, right? Or I said, we could just pull the pin right now and move there today. Go up north, live there the rest of our lives and enjoy it. And we decided to do that. And my first job, so I wanted to find a job before we left. So everything we didn't need, we got rid of. We liquidated everything. I took all my tools, my welders, everything I had. And first job I got was up at Badger State Tire, Berlin. Tommy Merrifield, super nice guy. Can't say enough good about him. He was a guy that taught me a lot about the automotive business. He was not a mechanic. He was not a mechanic at all, but he was a very, very sharp businessman. His job before he started that, he worked for a company that would go and bail out auto repair shops that were failing. So, I mean, he had the knowledge, and, I watched him for a couple of years, right? And I learned a lot, so much from him. And then that job plays more into where I am now than you can believe. So I would work. So when I quit my job and I moved up north, I made a lot more money at the town of Richfield, obviously, right? And then started working for him. It was a lot less, but I needed a job, and we would have you'd work every other Saturday, and then you'd have one day off during the week. You know what I mean? How that would work.
Yep.
I worked every lunch hour. I worked every Saturday. I worked every day of the week, to survive. I mean, that's what I had to do. Now, at this time, I had that shop in town, but I was renting it out at the time. And so I worked for Tommy at Badger. And I don't know, it must have been about a year into it. I kicked my renters out. They weren't paying their rent. Long story short, I just had the building to myself. So I just thought, I'm going to do stuff that Tommy doesn't do, right? I mean, I would do like pull cabs off trucks, put rust-free cabs on, stuff that we didn't do there, because I wasn't about to step on his toes. I wasn't going to just pull in service that he could have, right? I mean, he's in Berlin, but it didn't matter. So
One thing I was going to say was, in regards to Tommy, is having a really good businessman as a boss. Those guys build strong workers or know how to pick them, because you can find weakness in people and strengths in people right away. So a good businessman can determine that pretty quickly.
when I worked for him for 2 years, we had a guy come in once on the lunch hour. His name was Mike Day. And he came in all ornery. He had a U-joint out of his truck. And Tommy told him, he said, Mike, he said, it's noon. The rack's scheduled all afternoon. He said, we can't get in for 3 days. And
Was it a Dodge by chance?
No, it was a 1980 Chevy 4-door 4-wheel drive dually. It was a
Okay.
rear drive shaft rear U-joint. I remember like it was yesterday. And I told Tommy, I said, I'll tell you what. I said, I'll knock one out during lunch. He said, you can get that done by 1. I said, like breathing air, man. So I said, get me a U-joint coming. I'll get it. He ordered a U-joint, bumper to bumper, brought it. Time they got there, I had the U-joint out, put it in, got it all done. From that day on, Mike Day was my best friend. I mean, he, because I went out of my way for him, he felt, not that he owed me, but you know what I'm saying?
He liked you. You rubbed him the right way.
Yeah, just generally a really nice guy. And so I got to know Mike really good. And then I had that old truck. I don't know how, a little bit after I had that truck at my shop, because he had gotten a rust-free cab for it. So I'd taken the cab off and I'd taken the box off, and I'm getting it ready to put a new cab on it. And it was sitting outside. You remember Nelson Muffler, right?
Yep. I used to work there as a welder.
Okay. And Nelson, when it was Nelson or Cummins?
Yep. When it was Nelson.
Nelson.
Well, no. I think Cummins had just purchased them. They just transferred
Okay.
to Cummins.
So anyway, so when it was Nelson, it was after, I don't know, 6, 7 o'clock at night. I was working at the shop, and I was just putzing around on something, and then guy comes by and he stops. He said, "Hey, I see this frame out here. This has got a Dana 60 front end. We use them on our pulling trucks." And he was doing they hired him to do some kind of maintenance over at Nelson's. He was from the Rapids. And I said, "Well," I said, "it's a friend of mine." I said, "I don't know if he wants to sell the frame or build it or what." So I called Mike and I said, whatever. And I think he made a deal and ended up selling it to the guy. And then the
Nice.
guy comes back and he says, "Hey," he says, "Do you know anybody? I got a pipe bender for sale, brand new, and I got a wheel balancer." And I said, "Okay." And he said, "Do you know anybody interested?" I said, "Well, I might be interested." And he gave me a price, and I talked it on. I said, what do you think of just going my own business? You know what I mean? Just start my own deal up. And at this time, it's 1996.
This is how it starts.
Yeah, this is how it starts. It's 1996. Well, let me back up a little bit just before that, Dawn and I had gotten married. And 1996, we went to Vegas on a fun jet and got married in Vegas. It was me and her, and we had to buy some, people to be, witnesses. Yeah, that's how that all started in Vegas, right? And so we got married, and we're at home, and I talked to her about it. I said, "What do you think?" She goes, "Well, I don't know. What do you think?" I said, I don't know. I had said, I'm, a little nervous about it, right? I got a job. So I call Mike Day, my friend. I said, "Mike," I said, "here's what's going on. I can get this pipe and I get this, that." So I'm thinking about going to my own business. He said, "Don't even do it. Don't think about it." He says, "You can't fail. You will not fail." He said, "You don't fail. You don't fail at anything." Told
Some good
Dawn,
advice. That's some great
yeah,
advice right there.
told Dawn. Dawn said, "Well, let's try it." So I didn't have 5 cents to my name back then. So I went to the bank, Ed Schrader. You know Ed Schrader.
I
That was
do.
my
I do.
that was my banker at Union State Bank. And
Let
he
me
gave me
before
the
we
loan. What's that?
before we get too far into this, John,
Yeah.
let's take a quick break and let's have them listen to a message from my sponsors. We're about 35 minutes into this, so about the
Yep.
halfway point. Let's just
Perfect.
take a quick break right here. Enjoy this moment from our sponsors, and we'll be right back. If your business needs a fresh, professional look, What the Snark and Wild Rose has you covered. They specialize in custom branding, from apparel and drinkware to sharp decals for your vehicle, equipment, and even storefront. If you need help with marketing, social media, or creative ideas for your business, they can assist with that as well. They're all about elevating your brand and helping you present your business with confidence and the gear to match. Whether you're starting out, refreshing your image, or just want some custom apparel for your team, stop down on Main Street in Wild Rose and let them help bring your ideas to life.
Good.
All right, folks, thanks for tuning back in. I hope you enjoyed that message from our sponsor. All right, John, back to you with you were talking about Ed Schrader when we left off.
Yeah, so I went to Union State Bank, and Ed Schrader was there. And he was the guy that borrowed me my money on my house and borrowed me my money on my on that building on Pickle Row.
Wow.
And I went in by Ed. I said, "Ed," I said, "here's the deal." I said, "Want to start my business? I can buy this, buy that." I started this whole business with $4,000. That's what I borrowed
Wow.
to start the business.
Wow.
Yeah, that was it.
That's impressive.
I'll tell you, that's where I started from. And then when I started my business, my mom, she retired and she sold her house in Hubertus, right? And she moved up. She lived with us for a little while, and then we ended up
Wow.
getting her house, but she worked for me. Oh man, a long time. I should actually look up how many years exactly, but I'd say all of 15 years she worked for me.
Wow.
And, when I first started, it was me and her, right? Dawn still had a job, so she'd answer the phones, she'd schedule, and, we'd be putting ball joints in. I'd have her hanging off a pry bar, as I'm putting a ball joint in, 'cause that's all I had, right? I just had her.
Right.
So she learned quite a bit about it, and I remember when I started the shop up there, I borrowed the money, I bought the pipe bender, I bought the balancer, bought a couple other things, right? I mean, I was pretty frugal, but I had a lot of things, welders, compressor, torches.
Right.
I had all that stuff for years. So bought a hoist, get that installed. And then so I we're scheduling work, and I scheduled a bunch of work, and she had no clue. That's one thing I learned from working from Tommy, is how to be efficient and fast, right? I could knock out 4 ball joints, tie rod ends, alignment on a 4-wheel drive Chevy truck with axle U joints in 4 hours, in and out the door. And after you did, you do enough of anything, right? You just know what tools you just get good at it.
You perfect it.
So
Absolutely.
yeah. So I got all this stuff on the schedule, and she goes, she's never worked with me in a shop, you know. She goes, we're never gonna get this all done. Well, 4 hours later, she goes, I can't believe you just did all that.
And that's what you needed to hear was the,
Yeah,
"We'll never
yeah.
get it done," right?
Well, yeah, yeah. Well, not well, but I knew what it was, right? And
Right.
but she's looking at all these people. I mean, there's sometimes I'd have 4 or 5 people in that office at one time, that little tiny office over there, and I'd just be knocking the work out, you know, and but that it wasn't long after that I hired my first mechanic. And I'll tell you what, it I had, you know, that old shop. I had three hoists in that shop, two lows and one
Wow.
high. I had two on the
Oh,
sides.
really?
Well, you can only go up high enough to work on like brakes and stuff on the two end ones, on the side ones, but the middle you could go all the way up. Yeah, but that's all I had, right? So now I'm getting too far ahead of myself again here. Yeah, I gotta back up again. So anyway, so she moved up here and worked for a long time. She ended up buying a house and renting it to her because she didn't want to own a house. And that was right on Town Line Road across from the water tower. And she lived there, you know, the remaining parts of her life. And I'll tell you what, I had to put a stove in the shop. No, no kidding. I mean, I ate like a king. There was beef roast for lunch. She would bake cookies. Every guy that worked for me never went anywhere for lunch, right? It was home.
Spoiled, yeah.
Every single day was home cooking, you know, beef roast, pork chops. I mean, you name it, she'd make it, right? 10 o'clock, bacon and eggs. If you know, it just, you never knew what was going to come out. And then, you know, the afternoon she'd make something in the oven, cakes, cookies, you know. But she liked to bake. And when there's only 3 people, you could fill up the schedule pretty quick. And then she had a little time to kill. And then, God, it wasn't, God, I know I'm missing something here in between this time. So yeah, so this is probably 1990, 97 is when I officially opened my business. And 2027 will be 30 years that it's been
So
open.
wow.
So that was 90 I opened. So 90, 98, 99. So only in business a couple of years, right? Well, at that time, Ed Schrader went to Eaton Naturals. Remember that? him and his brother started that deal, or his brother, but then Ed worked for him. How that
He
worked
told
out?
me about that. Yeah, he told me about that.
Yeah,
Up on the
Eaton was
hill
called.
by the old milk specialties, right?
Yeah, yep, exactly. Well, that they bought that from them. Well,
Correct.
from his brother.
Correct.
So in '99, we ended up having a house fire and lost everything at home. It was in the middle of January. It had to be, I don't know, 10 below zero, 8 below. It was cold. And the fire started somewhere either with the fireplace or electrical or something. They couldn't tell exactly. But by the time we got the call and I got out there, it was pretty much gone. And by the time the fire trucks actually got there and started doing something, there wasn't nothing to save, right? I mean, I had my Carhartt
Melted
on.
or
Yeah, I had my Carhartts, my hat, my boots. You know, Dawn was in town. She came to town. She had whatever she had. So house burns down. And I'll tell you what, it's amazing how many people in the community came out. Unbelievable. People, Mike Day was the first guy there. Started loading up all the scrap, pulling stuff out. And so many people show up. And back then I had 3 years, I had so many customers, right? I had masons, I had flat work, I had guys that built houses, right? And when that happened, I went to John Dix. He had Wicks Homes. And it was a home that came, it was modular, but it was all walls and trusses, but it came in pieces kind of assembled. And he was able to give me the top of a list for a house. Nothing fancy back then. It was, I think with the base and everything, it was like $73,000. The house. So I go to the bank. That's gone, right? My loan
oh yeah,
officer.
that's right. That's right. He's working at the company now with his
Sorry.
brothers.
I go to the bank and here's this young guy sitting in there and he's my new loan officer and he
Just rubbing his palms together. I
well,
can't wait to work with this guy.
well, not exactly. I mean, I got in there and I was in business for 3 years, right? Just starting out, you know, not a ton of money on the books to show at this point. And so I had a trailer and I had 40 acres. So basically my insurance was, it paid off everything I owed on the whole thing, but there was no money to build. But everything was free and clear. So I go to the bank and Don's in there with me and we go to the bank and I told the guy what happened. Our house burned down. I said, I can get this house for whatever in the basement. You know, it's like $73,000. I don't know the exact numbers. That's a long time ago, but right around there. It was in the low 70s. So he opens up my file and he's looking at my file and he says, Mr. Wenninger, he says, the last 3 years, I don't see any profit here. And I looked at him. I said, well, I haven't been eating macaroni and cheese every day. So I'm doing pretty good. Well, he looks at it. He said, well, based on these numbers, he said, I don't think we can help you. And
Wow.
he closes my file, and I'm sitting there in the chair. And at this point, my ears are about as red as can be. I mean, Ed wouldn't even have questioned it, right? Ed would have that note wrote before he even closed the file. He would never open the file. It
Right. He knew
wasn't
you
that.
were good for it. You would have got approved.
I never missed a payment on anything. Not on my two buildings, not on my, nothing, nothing. He knew Ed back then. The bankers knew you for who you were, not a number.
Right.
So I looked at Dawn. There's no kidding. I looked at Dawn. I said, "You feel okay? Feel comfortable in here?" She looks at me like I'm nuts. She goes, "Yeah." I said, "Warm enough?" She goes, "Yeah, it's okay." I looked at him. I said, "Well, here's the deal." I said, "I'm going to need a key for the bank," because I said from here on out, his office is the first one when you walk in the door. I said, "I'm going to need a key to get in here because I don't have any place to sleep. No, I have nowhere to go. I don't have nothing but the clothes of my body." I said, "So I'm going to have to sleep here in your office." And I said, "That's all we got." And you're telling me you can't help me. And I told him that, and I said a little bit more of a tone than that. And
Right. Right.
I was kind of worked up at the time, right? And he opens my file up and he looks at it. He said, "Well, Mr. Wenninger, I think we can help you." And I thought to myself, why would you make somebody go through that, right? I
Yeah.
mean, are you having new guy syndromes, or I didn't get it. I didn't get the whole concept, right? Good credit. My credit was absolutely perfect. I just didn't get it.
On-time payments. Yeah.
What's
Like
that?
that's, I said, yeah,
Yeah.
with the on-time payments and everything, you should have been approved.
Oh, hands down. So anyways, so he did approve it. And
Thank
I
God.
and now this is the middle of January at this point. And I'll tell you what, I called a lot of favors in. I called my John Siebert was my mason. I worked on his vehicles. All his stuff's put away for the winter, right? He dug it all out. He poured all new base. He poured my basement walls, did the flat work. I mean, this was cold. Randy Rademacher brought us backhoe, dug the whole basement out, moved every inch of dirt. Friends, family, people from the community, they all chipped in. My house went to the top of the list. I think it was, I want to say
We're
within,
experiencing a little bit of lag here.
don't quote me exactly, but I think it was like 40 some days I was back in a new house, completely built. I mean, basement, the whole works. So I mean that's unbelievable how the community came together on that.
That's awesome.
And I don't take that lightly at all. I mean, fortunate, right? Surrounded by good people, it usually does that. So, all the help I gave other people, it came back around finally, kind of paid it back around. But I was grateful for that. So, so that was in 1999. And then, what was it, around 2001. So I was in my building for 5 years, right? The guy didn't want to give me a loan for my house. But in 2001, I built that new shop. Dawn and I were at Applebee's and I drew it on a napkin. Went to the bank, called my buddy Spike. Spike's Construction out of where she lives up by Gillette. Told him what I wanted. And at that point, I left that bank and went to Farmers Exchange Bank out in the Squirrel, where you worked in that bank.
Yep. Yep.
Yep, in your office there. And Jeff Sawtell was my banker. And back to Mike Day again. I told Mike Day what I wanted to do, and I said, with the bank, with the the whole deal, and let me make a phone call. So he was really good friends with Jeff. Jeff calls me up and says, "John, Mike says you don't want to do this." He said, "Come in and show me what you got." So I gave him and got him. He said, "Yeah." He says, "Yeah, tell him to come down, start building it. Let's get the paperwork done." And it was that easy. It was just the people I knew, right? And
Wow.
Mike pretty much told me, "Hey, he's good for it. If he ain't good for it, I'll cover it." I mean, I had people vouching. And yeah, never missed a payment, just always
That's
good
awesome.
and appreciated, because when I needed something, they were there for me. So that was nice. So yeah, I built that new shop in 2001. And I'll tell you what, that was a game changer. I used to bend exhaust on RVs out in the gravel parking lot and, work on that stuff, and we put a hoist in. And I built that, I would like to say, very, very frugal. I built that as inexpensive as I could to keep my costs low, right? And the only thing I wish I would have did different, not knowing it now, is I should have made it about 15 feet wider and put garage doors on both sides. And I mean, that's an afterthought, right? You're looking at dollars and cents at that point, trying to figure out how you're going to pay for this thing how are you going to pay for this monstrosity after you build it?
Right.
And yeah, once I built that, I'll tell you what, what was I up to then? 5, 6, I was up to 7 hoists then. It was unbelievable. I mean, back in 2001. And I'm going to tell you something real. Since the day I opened, before the day I opened, I've never to this day had the lot clear with no cars to work on. Not once.
That's awesome.
There's always something somebody will drop off and say, "Hey, when you get time," and there's no rush, get it in. So if we get a slow time, we just pull off that inventory and we fix it, right?
Right.
And fortunate, very fortunate. So, I mean, that's, unbelievable time in my life, you know, and that was, I think 2001. I believe that's when Emily came along too. So
It's
that
interesting. That's when I moved to Wisconsin, was 2001.
was it?
Yep,
Yeah,
yep.
I believe,
I
yeah, I
started
believe
high
that.
school in Watoma as a sophomore in 2002.
Yeah, yeah. I was actually scared to death to get married. I mean, I made her wait 5 years, and she said, "Are we getting married or what?" I said, "What's the big hurry?" So we ended up going to Vegas and getting married, and we got married, and we come back, and she says, "Are we having kids or what?" I went, "Oh no." I said, "Do you know how many diapers they take? Does anybody notice?" And
It needs a
oh
fresh
yeah,
lube change every 30
oh
minutes.
yeah, yeah. I'll tell you what a game changer. I'd recommend it for anybody. I mean, gives you a whole reason for living. I'll tell you that. Gives you a reason for
100%.
working. Unbelievable. Well, you know that. Yeah.
Yeah, I was married for 12 years. I started a family very young. So it definitely changes people. It made me get a job at the foundry. It made me focus on insurance and benefits for my family. I was thinking long term 401k. I was thinking of things I would not have been thinking of had I been a
Yeah.
single 18-year-old boy.
And at this point, the kids take precedent in your life.
100%. Gives
You're
you
gonna do
motivation to work harder.
100%. Yeah. Well, you can't fail now, right? You
I
got
got
you
I got
got
to put
mouths to
food on
feed.
the table.
Yes.
Yep.
Yep. 100%. So I mean, she came along, and that was a blessing. Everything went real good with that one. So that worked out good.
You're good
Well,
with
Jake.
that one.
Well, Jake, he had a little complication when he came out. We'll get to that little bit here. But yeah, so that worked out. No, she worked out good. And I'll tell you, back in the day when I started, like in '01, '02, '03, that's when I started getting into towing. You know, it was basically I did all the towing. I only had like one or two guys that worked for me then. So when I say I work 100-hour weeks, people don't understand what that is. That's going home at 2 in the morning and getting back at 6 in the morning, 7 days a week. And I did that. I don't want to say I did 100-hour weeks every week, but I did that for 10 years straight, building the towing up. Um, Tow all night, tow during the day, wrench during the day, wrench at night, just on and off either way. And the only regrets I got about that is I lost a lot of time with my kids growing up. We go on family vacations and we did a lot of things, but there's a lot of time that I can't get back, right? I mean, there's obviously they were when they were sleeping is when I was working, or vice versa, if they're in school I was working. But I'll tell you what, but nothing was ever handed to me, right? I mean, it started from zero. Nobody just gave me a business with tow trucks and said, "Here, have a nice day." It was starting with a $4,000 and a pipe bender. It's just hard work, right? You put hard work into anything, you'll make it work. It'll come out. So I mean,
100%.
yeah, I mean that's how it all starts. It's just and I think there's parts too where there's some luck involved, right? I mean, you got to hit stuff at the right time, just not knowing that you're even hitting it at the right time. And it's a lot of luck involved in this whole thing. It just isn't like I just did the math and yes, on paper it looks perfect and it's going to work perfect. It doesn't work like that at all. I mean, you can do all the math you want, but you still got to have just a little bit of luck to go with it. I
I tell
mean,
people that it kind of reminds me of going fishing. You got to be prepared. You got to be at the right place at the right time. And then
yep.
you have to use the right baits and the right lures and to know what you're going after. And then if you're good enough and God's in the universe and the world is going to bless you, God will give you a reward,
Yeah,
you know?
100%. Yeah. And we'll get into that a little later too, another one, but I always refer to it as farming, right? You can have the best land, you can have the best fertilizer, the best seed. You can't make it rain, right?
Yep,
I,
absolutely.
I mean, you got to have a little bit of luck. You got to have people that break down. You got to have you got to have weather conditions where you're needed, right? I mean, in my business, anyways, and I'm glad to be there to help. You know, we've been there, well, since '96. I've been towing probably since 2001, right in there. And I'll tell you what, the community, very good working relationship with the whole community. Love it, absolutely love it. Fire department, sheriff's department, tavern league. I support all of them. I try to support as much local community as I can. Easttown Appliance. I mean, I shop locally where they come to me. Right. I can't do it if they don't come by me. If they come by me.
Absolutely.
They're giving me a living. I need to pay it back. It's
Absolutely.
like try to do everything I can locally if possible. Instead of running to Menards, I'll go to Ace. I just, the people there, they know what you need. I mean, it's a wonderful, works good. Or if I
It's
go
like
to Waukoma Hardware, same thing.
it's like how you said you went to go for a loan, and back then the bankers knew you for who you were. They knew you
Mhm.
were good for it. Coming from Chicago, moving to Atoma, I could see how the community here is way more intact. They're way more like the hospitality is still there. People aren't ugly. You know what I'm saying? They haven't
Yeah.
been tainted by society as much in the smaller communities yet.
Yeah, and coming from Chicago, right? I don't even know what that life is like. I don't, you know what I mean? It's just you live in Wautoma. It's just everything's so simple and so clean and so everything just works, right? I mean, we don't have a lot of people that live here are never subject to any of that, right? They don't even
Right.
know that they don't know that world exists, right?
Correct.
That's like sitting in Florida a week after you left, 20 below and a foot of snow, right? When you're in Florida, you don't even know that even exists anymore at this point.
Right.
So I mean it's amazing how we do take it for granted. 100%. How lucky we are to live where we do live. You know what I mean? And we have a really good community. That's for sure.
Small town USA is still a great place where dreams can be born,
Oh,
and
yes.
greatness can be achieved. It's just small enough to where everyone still like your name still matters. Like you said, you're not a number, you're a name, you're a family member. You come from a lineage of people. So
Yeah, yeah. My customers come in, Brandy, Michelle. I mean, they do an excellent job. They greet them by name. They know them. They personally know these people. I mean, and they know their struggles and they know things that happen. And you try to at the end of the day, you try to I don't want to say be their friend, but you want to be their friend. You want to help them out. You want to fix the
yeah,
problem. Not be
right,
part of it. Fix it. And
absolutely.
in another segment, we go down the line here a little bit. I got some really good stories of that too. That of what we've done and what we've done, and helping people out. And it's just these stories will blow your mind. I could write a book on stories of the last almost 30 years, right? So I think I got to get going here.
Yeah, we're about 1 hour here into this episode. So what we'll do
Yep,
is we'll make this like a to be continued, and we'll have you on either next week or the week after. I know with Christmas coming up, schedules get a little
yep.
iffy, but let's get back together and part two,
Yeah,
digging deep
sounds good. I got a lot
with
of good
John
stuff
Wenninger.
coming. A lot of good stuff coming yet.
Hey John,
So
thank you for I appreciate you taking the time to join us today and share some of this story. This is an awesome one so far, and we'll pick back up right where we left off.
well, thanks for having me, Mariano.
Hey, you have a wonderful rest of your day, John. Take care.
Yep. Bye bye.